Hello, my name is Himari and I am a student at ISY. Today I will be talking about bioplastics. So plastic was originally created from petroleum, and although this made it very durable and practical, it is also very difficult to dispose. And as a solution to the increasing amount of plastic pollution, bioplastics have gained popularity. And the first type is bio-based, which means that the plastic is formed out of raw materials such as maize, sugarcane, and potatoes. And the second type is biodegradable, which means that 90% of the plastic is disposed of by microorganisms such as bacteria within 12 weeks in specific conditions. It is also essential to note that not all bio-based plastic is biodegradable and vice versa, and that bio-based and biodegradable are not the same thing. So as bio-based plastic is made from raw materials, the idea is that we do not have to use petroleum anymore. But that is not quite the case. A good can be labeled as bio-based as long as it contains over 20% raw materials. This means that the majority of a plastic could contain petroleum-based plastic. And in order to accommodate the rapid increase in bioplastic use, farmers, such as the sugarcane farmers in Brazil, are beginning to grow this as a monoculture. This means that these farmers are dependent on this one product. So when there's a bad crop yield or once the soil starts to erode, their incomes are at risk. And to avoid this, they're using pesticides, some of which are banned in the EU because they are so detrimental to human health as well as the environment. And this has had several severe environmental impacts, which not only affect the supply of bio-based plastic, but also our lives. And additionally, 0.02% of land is being used to grow the raw materials. This does not sound like a lot, but it is important to remember that the demand for bioplastics is growing rapidly. And we are risking the availability of food for plastic when there already is a global shortage of food. So the real question is, how much are we going to risk the earth and our lives for plastic? And although I mentioned Brazil earlier, it is important to note that over half of the production capacity of bioplastics is in Asia. This shows that bioplastics affect not only this region, but also Myanmar and our lives. And there's biodegradable plastic, which is collected and sent to be degraded or incinerated, depending on whether the country makes the distinction. Oftentimes, plastic is only exposed to bacteria for 4 weeks instead of the required 12 weeks, as keeping plastic contained in a set environment for 3 months is just not economically feasible. And when biodegraded, there is no humus produced, which is the organic compound of the soil that contains the nutrients, and there's additional heat that cannot be used to power other facilities or make new plastic. And as a result, biodegradable plastic is often sent to the incinerators, which is a form of waste disposal that produces harmful greenhouse gases. So, taking into account the numerous environmental and societal impacts bioplastics have, we can deduce that it is not any more or less environmentally friendly compared to the traditional oil-based form of plastic. And therefore, the new problem is that the firms are utilizing bioplastics under the notion that society will believe that it is more environmentally friendly. And this is working. This is an example of greenwashing, which means to mislead and that a product is better for the environment when in reality it is the opposite. And a supporter of bioplastics can say that taking into account the whole lifespan of bioplastics, it is less harmful because it does not release carbon dioxide. But this argument fails to consider the other severe environmental effects. And in essence, the idea of bioplastics was innovated, but its implementation was not as successful. And this new problem adds on to our original problem, which was the increase in petroleum-based plastic pollution. So now we need to find a way for plastic to stop flooding rivers and we need to deal with ocean plastic, which Myanmar is shockingly ranked 17th in the world, while dealing with the global increase in bioplastic production. So the three solutions I have looked into is one, finding an alternative source, so creating bioplastics from sources other than raw materials. And for the second and third proposal, I decided to take a step back and look at the root cause, which was plastic pollution. And from there, I looked into public awareness and solid waste management, which is the entire process of collecting, transporting, and disposing waste. So the USDA developed a bioplastic made from casein, which is a protein made from milk, well, protein in milk. And in order to make it more stable, they added an alkali compound, and now it is 500 times stronger than oil-based plastic, while still being edible. This is very innovative, but it does pose several concerns. For one, there's a limit to how much can be spent on implementing these new changes. Bioplastic production is already more expensive than its counterparts, with polylactic acid, PLA, being an average of 20 to 50 times more than petroleum-based plastic. And another issue is formed by the additives, such as cellulose or the alkali compound used in this example, where we are only worsening the problem by making plastic stronger, which makes disposal even more difficult. As for public awareness, the Yangon City Development Committee, or YCDC, handed out 11,000 copies of pamphlets encouraging people to sort their waste in color-coded bags. The pamphlets had minimal effect in the sense that the people did not make a distinction between wet or dry, bioplastic or not, and definitely not bio-based or biodegradable. And at the same time, the waste collectors are not able to make the distinction either due to a lack of equipment and materials. So although public awareness is effective at getting people informed in the short run, it has no measurable long-term effects on the division of organic waste from bioplastics or bio-based from biodegradable plastic. So the current situation shows that Yangon is reliant on open dumping, which is especially susceptible to open burning, leading to air pollution. And bioplastics do not release a measurable amount of methane or carbon dioxide in landfills compared to oil-based plastic, but creating more landfills is just not environmentally sustainable. And the 4 stages shown below highlight the importance of cooperation between the firms who are producing the plastic and using the plastic for the product and the government, as well as increased measures to make sure that the workers have the equipment they need. However, there is also a lack of data collection and regulation measures, meaning we do not know how or if this is being checked. And the plan also does not discuss how to deal with bioplastics, which is an increasingly important issue due to its prominence in the market. So the solution I concluded with is to make changes in the current solid waste management plan and change it to suit the rise of bioplastics. And the current plan is to implement incineration, but instead of disposing this waste, we should consider mechanical recycling. This is a process where waste is collected, sorted by type and its characteristics, pressed, washed, and then dried to become pellets that are used to make new plastic goods. And one of the main barriers to implementing recycling is the lack of division between organic waste and bioplastic, as well as the different types of plastic. But what recycling facilities are able to do is separate types of bio-based plastics by float tanks, which split them up based on density and their characteristics. And it is important to divide by the types of plastic because they have different characteristics, and when they're mixed, the recycled plastic will not be of good quality. And so when we're trying to make recycled plastic, it is important to consider the quality because we are going to rely on that. And of course, a limitation to mechanical recycling is that it does cost more to implement compared to incineration. But as figure 12 shows, it is more profitable in both low and high income countries in the long term. So by implementing a system in which we can continue to use the same resources to make a profit, we are essentially becoming more sustainable in the long term. And to implement these changes, there needs to be more specific laws on regulation. For instance, we need to make sure that firms are reporting their use of oil-based plastic and bioplastics and labeling accurately to help the people divide their waste. Workers need to document work conditions to make sure renovations are made when necessary to ensure that the waste is being separated properly and not escaping to the rivers. There also has to be increased funding for waste collection so that people can make clear distinction about what type of waste goes where, and also to waste transporters so they have the right equipment to make sure that the bioplastics are separated from oil-based plastic and bio-based plastics are sorted separately from biodegradable plastic. And by investing more to the division of waste and structuring clear places for each type of waste to go to, the recycling process will run more efficiently and the recycled plastic will be better in terms of quality. And in essence, there needs to be a greater cooperation between the stakeholders. We already face substantial limitations, including funding challenges and the eventual decline in the quality of recycled plastic over time. But we need to make sure that this process is as efficient as possible. And as a result, society needs to lead the path to encourage firms to become more sustainable and take responsibility for plastic use. In response, firms need to be clear about their products and aid in the process of recycling, and the governing body needs to make sure that these regulations are in place and there's a greater contact between all the stakeholders. So, this is a national issue and everyone needs to be a part of it. Thank you.